We're here to talk about QEEG brain maps, what happens inside a dysregulated or distracted brain, and what teachers, therapists, doctors, what do they miss and why? If you wish you could actually see what's going on inside your kid's brain when they melt down or can't focus or freak out over little things, this is what we're talking about today. I think the thing that still shocks me 3 decades later is most parents are just told the same old diagnoses. You got a kid who dysregulates or is sluggish in their processing or has big emotions. They want to slap an ADD diagnosis, because it's easy and pretty much anybody can meet that criteria, but that's a surface diagnosis. We have to dig deeper. And what I love about QEEGs is it's going to give us quantitative data. It's going to check under the hood. We don't have to guess. And it really sees what doctors miss, what people miss, because these other diagnoses are just too easy to put on. This is really the nexus in our brain behavior reset program. Some people just do a brain map with me and want to know, but it is where I take all the guesswork out. I actually don't ask a ton of questions on my intake forms because brain maps get it done and tell us what's going on. We don't have to guess. Because I've done over 10,000 of these, this isn't a typical thing. Most providers aren't doing their own brain maps. And also, let's be honest, most people don't have 30 years of clinical experience to map behavior to the brain, and also just really somebody who's just dealing with complex stuff all the time. Not that I don't get some nice little anxiety cases and a little bit of ADHD, those are real struggles that we as parents have a hard time with helping our kids. But this gives us straight path to what's happening. I'm able to see nutrient deficiencies. I'm able to see what's happening in the gut. You're not going to go to somebody else and find that answer. And in fact, somewhere all the time between 30 to 40% of the time, and any time we're doing our brain behavior reset program, people have gone elsewhere and then come to me. That's not to say that there's not good practitioners. You are getting clinical experience. It's just a world of difference. Heard me tell the story about the air conditioner guy that these people came in and told me I had to replace all my air conditioners, and it was a $200 part. And the person saved me, I don't know, it's at least $50,000. That's what experience gets you. I have done so many brain maps in so many different situations. And I, not too long ago, did brain map for somebody, a mom named Sarah, for her son, Jack, who was a 10-year-old. And like all my other parents, felt like they had tried everything and was struggling with a diagnosis of ADHD. We do this brain map, and what does it show us? It shows us that really, guess what? Yeah, there were some focus problems, but it wasn't just ADHD. It was dyslexia. Now, I can't diagnose dyslexia with a brain map, okay? But then I did a history, and then I sent him back to school to find out more. And absolutely that was the problem. And he really wasn't an ADD kid. He was a kid with executive functioning and learning issues. And here's the great part of this. This is why the meds didn't work. This is why this treatment didn't work, the OT, all that other stuff, which I'm a huge fan of OT and PT. No dissing on that. He needed a reading intervention. There wasn't anything we were going to do. Yes, the neurofeedback absolutely helped his processing, but they were going down the wrong rabbit holes. And this is standard, unfortunately, of what happens when a lot of people come to me, which really makes me upset and frustrated and angry, sad that we have not improved things. Let's talk about a brain map. Let's talk about what is it? What does it actually do? So first of all, a QEEG is not the same as an EEG. An EEG is done in a medical hospital setting when you suspect abnormal brain function, AKA seizures, either pre-seizure or seizure activity. Those can be done for an hour. Those can be done for 24 hours and any time in between. And they are only looking at raw data to see if there are seizure activities. Resulting from what? We don't know. It's not the same. QEEG stands for quantitative encephalogram, and it measures your brain's electrical activity. So both EEG and QEEG is measuring surface electrical activity. And it's painless, it's non-invasive. You put a cap on. We use a 19-site one. I would certainly recommend at least doing that. There are more sites for research and whatnot. And you wear a soft cap with sensors on it. And we use conductivity gel. It's cool to the touch. There are caps that are dry. I never, ever, ever recommend them for kids. They take forever to get right so that it's actually measuring correctly. I've had many, many kids who have tried that unsuccessfully or actually then refused to do neurofeedback because they thought it was the same thing. So this is showing us where the brain is overactive and underactive. Underactive, what is it linked to? Poor attention, poor listening, low motivation, brain fog. When it's overactive, the brain has too much connectivity, too much intensity in regions, and then connectivity is the communication. And what do we see? We see big emotions, big reactions. We would see things particularly like OCD, anxiety, and the brain can have a mix of over and underactive areas. I'll show you some brain maps so you can see what it looks like. And it's basically like taking an image, a satellite image of the brain's weather patterns. And you can see where storms are brewing and where it's calm. And again, what's unique about me is that, yes, people can read brain maps, but I can connect it to behaviors in the real world and how it shows up. And what I will say to people is, well, do they have a hard time with this or do they have a hard time with that? Because I know that if that area is sluggish, if it's overactive, these are the only behaviors that you're going to see. Great part about this, I'm always Miss Positivity. There's always a way to change our brains. Yes, I use neurofeedback. Yes, I use calm PMF. Yes, I use magnesium, but there's diet, there's exercise, there's prayer. There's a lot of different ways. You just can't get stuck in analysis paralysis. I have never seen analysis paralysis of parents like I have right now. It's super concerning for me. And it's like, should I do this? What should I do? You got to go in, you got to make a choice, you got to stick with it, and you got to do it. There's no magic wand. What, again, just like with Sarah, this mom had tried all these different things that her physician recommended, the school therapist recommended, the OT recommended. And ultimately, in the end, he was really a pretty classic case of dyslexia. I'm not really sure why he was missed, but because he looked so unfocused, because his memory cup was full. When your memory cup is full, when you're a dyslexic, how about if you're in a classroom where everybody's speaking another language, your brain's going to shut off and you're going to have a really hard time paying attention. So on the surface, you can look like you have ADHD. Everyone always wants to think they have ADHD versus autism or dyslexia, or people are guiding you in that direction. There's a lot of misinformation and a brain map really gets in there. How can they use this information when they have a brain map? First of all, we switch from blaming the behaviors. He's just not motivated. She's just not listening, to biology, because kids never choose dysregulation. It's their nervous system reacting, and it's actually their nervous system telling you, I need some help, because behavior is a language of kids. In our CALMS protocol, CALMS, the A is avoiding personalizing. And this is an area where we all could have some growth, because we come in with the things our parents taught us, or maybe a teacher taught us. I had a school meeting yesterday for JC, and he's got a formal 504 accommodation plan. He's new in a high school, and we just had building accommodation plans in the past. And just so everybody knows, he's a fully remediated dyslexic except spelling. He's literally below the first percentile for spelling. And that's okay in modern world. So I had this meeting with a tough teacher, and I said to him, Mom's not going to this meeting. Dr. Roseann's going to this meeting. I had to go in there and advocate for him. And anyway, it was very pleasant. My husband was like, you kind of scared me, like this was going to be a bad meeting. But when we start really understanding what is happening. Obviously, I have a different vantage point of all this training, and certainly he's benefited, and he only got dyslexia reading instruction. But when we start seeing the biology of what happens, why it's happening, we can use that data to guide treatment. We don't have to waste years of trying random strategies and find what the brain actually means. I mean, I feel that parents are actually doing too much, and it's that they're not doing the right things in the right order. So much of what I do in our brain behavior reset program is actually reassessing. And this is what I do in my QEEG brain map diagnostic, is what actually worked and what has to happen in what order, because it makes a difference in the nervous system and it makes a huge difference in what's absorbed. And regulation first parenting, I've trademarked the term. We have to regulate first. You calm the brain and everything else follows. Nothing you do is going to work. You are wasting your time on your IVIG, on your reading intervention, on your OT. You're wasting your time if you're not regulating the nervous system. I'm going to scream it from the rooftops, and I wish people really freaking understood that. Don't get me started. What else can you do with QEEGs? You can use repeated QEEGs to track progress of your interventions. As part of our program, we do repeated QEEGs. I've also done repeated QEEGs for things like removing gluten from your diet, from reading interventions, from Qigong. I've had people do it Qigong. So it's a great way to see objectively what's happening. And of course, it's our way to build our plan out. And we always want to build it around calm, because once that brain is balanced, that's when your therapy, that's when the learning, that's when the connection between you and your child starts to really start to work. And again, I'm very concerned of the level of family stress that we're all experiencing. We absolutely can stop that. What does dysregulation actually look like in a QEEG? So dysregulation means the brain can't shift smoothly between states. It can't shift into calm. It can't shift to alert or focus states. These are the same kids. If you listen to my episode from yesterday about transitioning, these are kids that can't transition, maybe not in the way that you think. When we look at a QEEG, we can see too much fast activity. They can be in any region of the brain or the brain communication. Chaotic connectivity means that our emotional centers, our thinking centers are going to be too much. And we can slap clinical diagnoses on these all day long. To me, clinical diagnoses are a bucket of understanding. I spent 22 years doing neuropsych testing. It's very helpful. My own kid has a diagnosis, so he can get no spelling penalty. God help us, he needs no spelling and punctuation. He's actually not as bad at spelling as he is punctuation. These are things that can help us. But when we, for example, your child has anxiety versus OCD, huge difference in understanding. So there's really helpful. But just because you get a diagnosis does not mean you're getting proper help. You're not, probably most of the time. And that's why people are here. And that's why it's better to look at things in terms of under and overstimulation. Let me share with you an ADD brain. This is a case pre and post in our program, and red and yellow are high, blue is very low, and green is good. So this is pre the blue. This is a very understimulated brain of somebody with ADHD. This is somebody walking around who his parents were like, I think his name was Huh and Wah, because every time I called him, he was like, huh, what? And just was always 3 seconds behind. They saw him as very intelligent, but really lacking any gas there to really complete anything. And as the academic years went on, it was horrible. They got the tutor, they got the executive functioning coach, they got all that. What's fascinating here is that, why was this happening? So there were multiple things at play. And ultimately, in the end, because there's no one thing, there wasn't a known history of ADHD in the family. FYI, there were some suspected things. Really poor diet was on this brain map. We found that there were gut issues largely driving. We also found that he had hypotonia, which means he has cellular issues, mitochondrial issues. So the nutrient deficiencies were there, all these things at play. So we started working on the gut, we did neurofeedback, and we gave cellular support. And in the end, what happened is almost near perfect focus. Just like literally a shift, a dramatic shift, to the point where I love when this happens, where the teachers want to know what meds the kid's on. And actually, this teacher wrote just a beautiful, beautiful email to the parents that I get pretty verklempt, just saying how great. They weren't sure what was going to happen with this kid. It was a private school. He's a star student. So the brain map took us in a very different direction. Mitochondrial issues, gut issues, lack of protein absorption was really driving these focus problems. We're not even sure there's a genetic component in here. We don't need a genetic component to have focus issues. Now the kid is doing phenomenal, has sustained these changes. So I want you to understand what can happen when we have the proper diagnosis, because that was not happening. And these are great parents. And by the way, he was a clean eater. They were doing all this other stuff. His nervous system was too dysregulated for his gut to properly heal. There was a lot of layers, and the neurofeedback was a big part. This is actually somebody who had post-COVID and had OCD. So this is actually a PANS case where somebody had COVID and then sudden onset OCD. And so red is high. We see sort of a hot spot in this left frontal area, which reflects overthinking. And then we actually have low activity everywhere, which if you look at a brain map of somebody with OCD where it's genetic, they're actually going to have too much activity. So in the case, which can happen in infectious disease, particularly viral, it can turn off areas. And so the OCD actually developed because his brain was actually trying to start over and over, kind of like when your starter is going on your car and you just keep getting that key. Remember us in the 80s when we had our junk vehicles when we were learning to drive, and you just keep going and you catch it. Okay. So what happens is that repetitive action, because there's low activity, actually created anxiety, which then turned into OCD behaviors in their brain. And so coming to me, not making any connection to what was actually happening in their brain was a completely different treatment than what was presented to them, because they were going to a psychiatrist. They did all the meds. They were going to a therapist who said did OCD work. Baloney and cheese was doing anxiety work. And so everything was getting way, 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 way worse into full-on crisis and depression. Great news, completely resolved, and did the right therapy, which is ERP therapy, got them to a PANS specialist to get the microbes in balance. That's another whole topic we'll be talking about. Really important. And that is why this is important. So when it comes to a brain map, we have a base knowledge. We know what the brain does. We know what the regions are. But then what does it diagnostically tell us? So we can easily see things like, wow, that really looks like ADHD. Oh, wow. But the health components, this is just happening really honestly, because I've done so many thousands of them that I interpret patterns. And that's what brain map analysis is saying this region does this area of connectivity does this. When this pattern and this pattern and this pattern are together, I've seen that 50 times. And those 50 times, it's somebody who has gut dysbiosis. The great news is that I work with amazing medical practitioners. So when we see this, we substantiate it. I mean, I even have people doing different types of health tests on their own. We get some great information. I had somebody recently who just has had long-term gut issues, I've gone to a lot of doctors. And I finally was like, we're going to run a poop test on our own. And basically what happened was they had one bacteria they actually had pretty good diversity, but they had one bacteria that was causing problems. And within less than 2 weeks of the protocol that we did, the gut issues practically went away. And this was going on for years. From the brain map, I knew something was going on, but also behaviorally was experiencing that. So it's so important to get to the root cause. We often think with our kids that there's one thing. What's the one test, Dr. Rowe? What's the one thing I got to do? Here's what I'm going to tell you. In these 3 decades I've been working since 1992, we are seeing a shift. There is not one thing. There's layers and complexity. What should really be the base is lifestyle, diet, and obviously nervous system regulation has to be the base no matter what your problem is, no matter what your treatment is. And our brain behavior reset program, we do it with you. We walk you through it. That's why people choose to do that. And again, people know me. This is now, you want to work with me? This is the time because I'm not working that much longer. Be on the lookout for the announcement. But if you're interested to work with me, you go to drroseann.com/help. This is the time. What happens when your brain is dysregulated is that this is why the discipline, the therapy, the good parenting you're doing, that's why nothing's working. Because when your brain's control center is offline, when it's dysregulated, nothing is going to stick. All these years, people come in, fly in all over the world, which I'm feel honored and grateful to support so many amazing people. But in the same breath, again, I feel annoyed and irritated that our system has not gotten better, and that even though we have more practitioners, it seems like they're always trying to get a thumbtack with a hammer all the time, when we really should be teaching people about this nervous system regulation and getting our body in balance in multiple ways. And we'll talk more about this in this series. But we have to get the right information. And that's what a brain map can do and really point you in that direction. And sometimes, just FYI, time limited, I do take other brain maps and do consultations with other people. That is part of what I do, not forever. And certainly, if you're interested in that, I would do that much sooner rather than later, because a brain map is only good as it's interpreted. It's like when I used to do neuropsych testing. The bulk of my report, I mean, not that I didn't do a crazy amount of testing, but I'd actually take their stuff and put it in graphs with like blue if it was low and red, and I would put the grade equivalent. And oh man, they hated my guts in the schools because, and I actually would have multiple times people say grade equivalents aren't valid. And I'd say, well, it's in the manual, and they just didn't know how to interpret the data, right? And that's what this clinical experience brings you in a brain map and really gets you very, very clear. Again, I feel privileged to help so many thousands of people to be able to do that. So we use the brain map as the foundation of our program. It's not just a diagnostic tool. It's our strategic roadmap. I'm a strategist. There ain't nothing I do in my life, in my business, and me as a practitioner, unless there's a strategy behind it. This brain map will guide you. Is it neurofeedback? Is it medical treatment? Is it nutrition? Is it behavioral coaching? Is it PMF? It's going to tell you the right map for exactly path for what you need. And that's why I love it, because it takes the guesswork out. I mean, mental health, you hear me say this, is truly spaghetti on the wall. And instead of saying, oh, let me try this supplement. I mean, in all the parent Facebook groups, it's like, which supplement stops dysregulation? Wouldn't we like to know that? You're taking a guess. Yes, we know magnesium makes a dramatic difference. Yes, we know vitamin D supports hormones, immune systems, is the peanut butter and jelly combination with magnesium. But you have to be way more strategic when you're doing things, because you can actually make things worse. And I don't just mean medications. It could be different therapies. I did auditory integration training with Max without really thinking it through. Was the worst treatment I ever did. Completely destabilized him and made him a crazy lunatic at 7 years old for months. And I didn't do my due diligence. I personally I was the one running the show, didn't have somebody to bounce things off of and really think it through. And there were only 26 research studies. I just got talked into it by somebody I trusted. It was a bad choice. And everything happens for a reason. It brought us to homeschooling because he literally was too dysregulated to set foot in school. If I put him in school, They would have called 911 at 7 years old. So I don't want you to have that happen. It was terrible. And I still have PTSD about it. But we need to have a plan, and we need to, if you have to have a diagnosis, I want you to have the right diagnosis. But I want you to start thinking about, what can I see? How can I use this data? Whether it's, and I'm a big fan of lab work too. Lab work does not have to be diagnostic. In fact, lab work should inform treatment. In the PANS world and the Lyme world, they're always like, but the test didn't show this. That's not how those diagnoses are made. These are things that inform treatment. So your kid doesn't just get better, stays better. That's what I want. And I get to see that. I'm going to lunch next week with one of my moms who I last saw their kid 13 years ago. And he's doing freaking amazing. Almost said the F word on that. So he's a man out in the world doing beautiful things and helping other people. Couldn't be more proud of him. We want to see what's happening, because the more your kid struggles, the more they're going to build shame. The more the resistance is going to come up, the more the frustration is going to happen at home. And that's when people get stuck. But back to basics, calm that nervous system down, people. Start with yourself. Don't just listen. Philomene is going to tell you what. Move your coolie. Get going. Do things every day to regulate. I know we couldn't regulate and could not be in a school system. We had to do homeschooling. I don't believe homeschooling is for everybody. JC is like, hell's no. You want to go back to those basics. Everybody is looking for the fix, and that is not what I see happening. It's regulating, it's nutrition, and detoxifying. Those are the things that bring long-term health. The road looks different for everybody, but don't let your foot off the gas. But I hope this was really helpful for you to understand the power of a brain map. I love them. They have changed my world. They've changed so many of the worlds of the people that I work with.
Want more insights and solutions? Well, subscribe to our Dysregulation Insider, and it will show up in your inbox every week.